Eleanor Ashford's carpetbag hit the dirt the moment she saw them. Two identical giants, 6'5" walls of muscle blocking her path off the stagecoach. Her father had sold her to pay his debts, she knew that. What he hadn't mentioned was that he'd sold her to both of them. "Miss Ashford," the first one said, voice rough as gravel. "We've been waiting." The second one smiled, slow, dangerous. "Your father's debt is paid. Now you belong to us." Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and follow Eleanor's journey to the very end. Comment which city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The stagecoach door swung open. Dust exploded into Eleanor's face. "Copper Ridge!" the driver barked. "Out!" Eleanor grabbed her carpetbag, her hands shaking so hard she nearly dropped it. 3 weeks on trains and coaches, 3 weeks of telling herself she could do this, that she was strong enough, and now her legs wouldn't move. "Miss, I ain't got all day." She forced herself to stand. The hem of her navy dress caught on the seat. She yanked it free, heard the fabric tear. Didn't matter. Nothing from Boston mattered anymore. The driver's hand appeared in the doorway. She took it, stepped down into Colorado heat that slammed into her like a fist. The sun was vicious. The dust was everywhere. And standing 20 feet away, watching her like wolves watched wounded deer, were two men. Two identical men. Eleanor's breath stopped. They were massive, taller than any man she'd ever seen, broader, their bodies radiating raw physical power, even standing still. Work clothes, dusty boots, sleeves rolled up over forearms corded with muscle. Tan skin, dark hair too long falling across their foreheads. And eyes. God, those eyes, blue as summer sky, staring straight through her clothes to the terrified girl underneath. The one on the left moved first. 3 long strides and he was in front of her, close enough she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. "Miss Eleanor Ashford." Not a question, a statement of fact. "Yes." Her voice came out steady. Small miracle. "Caleb Chamberlain." He jerked his head toward his twin. "That's Jacob. We've been expecting you." Eleanor's mind blanked. She'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. Now every practiced word evaporated. "I have a letter. From my father." "We know what's in the letter." Jacob's voice was nearly identical to his brother's, maybe half a note deeper. He moved closer, and suddenly she was surrounded by them, hemmed in by their size, their presence, their complete confidence. "Question is, do you—" Eleanor's chin came up. Fear turned sharp in her chest, transformed into something harder. "My father owes you money. He sent me his payment. Let's not pretend this is anything else." Silence. The twins looked at each other, some wordless communication passing between them. Then Caleb laughed, short and surprised. "Direct? Good." "We paid your father's debts 3 days ago," Jacob said. "Every dollar. 17,000. The number hit her like cold water. "You already paid? Before you left Boston." "But you'd never met me. Never even, why would you—" "We saw your photograph," Caleb said. "That was enough. A photograph tells you nothing." "Told us you were beautiful," Jacob said quietly. "Told us you had fire in your eyes, even trying to look proper for the camera. That was enough to take the risk." "Risk?" Eleanor's voice climbed. "You call spending $17,000 a risk. What do you expect in return?" "You," Caleb said simply. "Both of you." The question burst out before she could stop it. The twins smiled, identical expressions, like wolves baring teeth. "Both of us," they said together. Eleanor's ears rang. The street tilted. She grabbed her carpetbag like a shield, pressed it against her chest. "That's insane." "That's honest," Jacob corrected. "It's illegal." "Lots of things are illegal," Caleb said. "Doesn't make them wrong." "This is— I can't—" Eleanor spun toward the boarding house Martha had pointed out earlier, desperate to escape. Her boot caught in her torn hem. She stumbled. Caleb's hand shot out, caught her elbow, steadied her. His grip was careful despite his strength. Easy. Don't touch me. She wrenched free, heart hammering. All right. He raised both hands, stepped back. All right. We won't touch you unless you want us to. I will never want. Give it a week. Jacob interrupted. Stay at the boarding house. We'll pay. Come out to the ranch, see what we're offering, ask whatever questions you need, then decide. I've already decided. Then why are you still standing here? Caleb asked softly. Eleanor opened her mouth, closed it. Because he was right, she should be running screaming, finding the law. Instead, she stood rooted to the dirt street, staring at these impossible men with their impossible proposal. 1 week, Jacob said. That's all we're asking. And if I say no, then we'll pay your way to wherever you want to go. California, back east Mexico, doesn't matter. The debt stays paid, we won't hold it over your father. Eleanor's fingers dug into her carpet bag. Why? Why would you do that? Because we don't want a prisoner, Caleb said. We want a partner. Someone who chooses this. No one could choose this. You'd be surprised what people choose, Jacob said, when they're offered real freedom instead of pretty lies. Boy, Martha Henley appeared from nowhere, stepping between Eleanor and the twins like a referee. Gentlemen, I think Miss Ashford needs to settle in before you overwhelm her completely. Mrs. Henley. Caleb nodded respectfully. We'll send a wagon at 6 tonight, Jacob said to Eleanor. Dinner at the ranch. You can see what we've built, hear what we're proposing properly. No pressure, no obligations. Just conversation, Caleb added. And if I refuse, Eleanor demanded. Then we'll try again tomorrow, Caleb said. And the day after. We're patient men when it matters. Martha took Eleanor's arm, started guiding her toward the boarding house. Eleanor looked back once. The twins stood exactly where she'd left them, watching her with identical expressions of patient hunger. Like they knew she'd come back. Like they could already see her surrender. The room Martha showed her was small, narrow bed, washstand, single window. Eleanor sank onto the mattress, her legs finally giving out. Those men, she whispered. They're serious. As a heart attack. Martha poured water into the basin. Been looking for a wife for 2 years. Turned down every eligible woman in 3 counties. Then your father's letter arrived. What did it say? Don't know exactly, but word travels fast in small towns. Your father owes money he can't pay. You're educated, refined, desperate enough to come west. Martha's expression softened. They didn't choose you because you're a convenient girl. They chose you because you're strong enough to survive what they're offering. Bigamy isn't survival, it's sin. Maybe. But out here, sin looks different than it does back east. You'll learn. Martha moved toward the door, paused. For what it's worth, the Chamberlains are good men, fair. They've never cheated anyone, never lied in business. If they say they'll treat you as an equal partner, they mean it. That doesn't make this right. No, Martha agreed. But it might make it possible. Eleanor tried to rest, couldn't. Her mind spun with images, those blue eyes, those careful hands, that absolute confidence. She unpacked mechanically. 3 dresses, 2 nightgowns, 1 winter cloak. Everything she owned in the world fit in a trunk smaller than her Boston wardrobe. She'd been wealthy once. Not anymore. At 5:30 she changed into her green silk dress, pinned her hair up with shaking hands, stared at her reflection and saw a stranger, pale, wide-eyed, terrified. The twins had seen steel in her. Where? She couldn't find it. The wagon arrived exactly at 6. Jacob sat in the driver's seat, reins loose in his hands. He climbed down when he saw her move to help her up. I can manage, Eleanor said sharply. I'm sure you can? But his hands settled at her waist anyway, lifted her easily onto the high seat. Doesn't mean you have to. She wanted to snap at him. The words died when she met his eyes, patient, amused, completely unruffled by her hostility. He climbed up beside her, clicked to the horses. They moved smoothly out of town. "Where's your brother?" Eleanor asked after 5 minutes of tense silence. "Finishing work. He'll meet us at the house." "Do you do everything together?" "Most things." Jacob glanced at her. "Does that bother you?" "Everything about this bothers me." "Fair enough." He turned his attention back to the road. The silence stretched. Then, "First time seeing the West?" "Yes." "What do you think?" Eleanor looked at the landscape rolling past, vast and empty, and so big it made her chest hurt. Mountains in the distance, their peaks white with snow. Sky stretching forever. "It's terrifying." "Good." She turned to stare at him. "Good means you're seeing it clearly. The West is terrifying. Beautiful but terrifying. Kills people who underestimate it." His voice dropped. "Only the strong survive." "I'm not strong." "You traveled 2,000 miles alone. Left everything you knew. That's not strong." Jacob shook his head. "You're stronger than you think, Eleanor. You just haven't had reason to test it yet." The ranch house appeared long, low, solid against the hillside. Corrals spreading out around it. Everything neat, prosperous, built to last. "Home," Jacob said, and the pride in his voice made something twist in Eleanor's chest. Caleb met them at the door. He'd washed, changed into clean clothes, but nothing could make him look civilized. Too big, too intense, too aware of her. "Welcome." He stepped aside. "Come in." The interior stopped her short. Not rough bachelor quarters, real furniture, clean floors, books on shelves, maps on walls. A home, not just a house. "You expected a pigsty," Caleb said, reading her expression. I don't know what I expected." "We value what we've built," Jacob said quietly. "Every board, every nail. We don't live like animals." They fed her elk steak and roasted potatoes at a long wooden table. The twins moved around the kitchen with synchronized efficiency. Caleb checking the meat, while Jacob sliced bread, neither speaking, but both aware of exactly what the other needed. "You work well together," Eleanor observed. "Had a lot of practice," Caleb said. "Been together since birth. Can't remember a time when it was just me, always us." "That must be strange." "That's normal," Jacob corrected. "Being alone, that would be strange." They sat to eat, Eleanor on one side, the twins across from her. The food was good. The conversation stayed carefully neutral. Weather, the ranch, her journey. Safe topics that danced around the real issue. Finally, Eleanor set down her fork. "Stop." Both men looked at her. "Stop pretending this is a normal dinner. Stop avoiding what we all know we need to discuss." Her voice shook but didn't break. "You're proposing something illegal, immoral, impossible. So let's talk about it plainly or I'm leaving right now." Caleb leaned back, studied her, then nodded. "All right, plain talk. We want you as our wife, both of us. Legally, only one of us can marry you. Practically, we'll both be your husband." "That's bigamy." "Only if we're caught," Jacob said calmly. "And out here, people mind their own business." "Why?" Eleanor demanded. "Why this? Why not just find two separate women?" The twins looked at each other. Something passed between them. Pain memory, old wounds. "Our mother," Caleb said finally, "died when we were 17. Our father was a drunk who beat her daily, broke her spirit piece by piece, until there was nothing left. We watched it happen, couldn't stop it. We were just kids." "When she died," Jacob continued, voice rough, "we buried her, packed our bags, left. Swore we'd never treat a woman like property. Never divide our loyalty between each other and a wife. If we married, we'd marry together, equal partners, all three. So I'm supposed to be some kind of experiment in reformed behavior." Eleanor's anger flared hot. A way to soothe your guilty consciences. No, Caleb said sharply. You're supposed to be our equal, the third leg of a stool. We're offering you real power, Eleanor. Real say in how this ranch runs, how our money's spent what we build. Your voice carries the same weight as ours. And in exchange, I give up my reputation, my morals, any chance of a normal life. You gave those up the moment your father went bankrupt, Jacob said bluntly. You think Boston society will take you back? You think any respectable man back east will marry the penniless daughter of a failed banker? The words hit like fists. Eleanor flinched. That's cruel, she whispered. That's true, Jacob said, but his voice gentled. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to make you see clearly. You have no good options, Eleanor. Only choices between bad and less bad. At least here you'd have power, partnership, a future you help build. And I'd be living in sin. You'd be living free, Caleb countered. Making your own choices, owning your own life. Isn't that worth more than society's approval? Eleanor's throat closed. Because yes, God help her, yes. She'd spent 19 years suffocating under society's rules. Never good enough, never proper enough, always wrong somehow. And when her father lost everything, those same people had discarded her like garbage. How would it work, she heard herself ask. Day to day. We share everything equally, Caleb said. Land money decisions. You'd be part of that equal voice, equal say. What about... Her face burned. The intimate aspects. However you're comfortable, Jacob said gently. We're not going to force you into bed. If you need time, we give you time. If you're only comfortable with one of us, we adjust. Though we want you comfortable with both eventually, Caleb added. That's what we're hoping for real partnership. All three of us. Eleanor stared at her plate. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. This was insane, impossible. And yet, tell me about the ranch, she said abruptly. How much land? How many cattle? What you owe? What you're worth? Caleb's eyes sharpened. Why? Because if I'm considering this, if I'm even thinking about it, I need to know exactly what I'd be getting into. Financially, practically, everything. The twins exchanged looks. Then Caleb started talking 5,000 acres, 2,000 head of cattle, 8 ranch hands, contracts with Eastern buyers, profits and losses, and future plans. Jacob added details, water rights, grazing rotations, breeding stock. They talked for an hour, treating her like a potential business partner, not a delicate flower to be protected from harsh realities. And Eleanor listened, her mind racing, because these men were offering her something no one else ever had: real information. Real power. The chance to actually build something instead of just being decorative. Your books, she said finally. Your financial records. I want to see them. Why? Caleb asked, but he looked intrigued rather than offended. Because I'm good with numbers. My father taught me bookkeeping. If I'm going to be a partner, I need to understand the business completely. Jacob smiled, slow and dangerous. You're considering this. I'm considering learning more, Eleanor corrected. Don't mistake caution for surrender. Wouldn't dream of it, Caleb said. His eyes heated. You can look at the books tomorrow. Come out in the morning. Spend the day. See how the ranch works. And tonight? Eleanor's voice trembled despite her best efforts. Tonight we take you back to town, Jacob said. Let you think. No pressure. They drove her back as the sun set, painting the sky impossible colors. At the boarding house, they both climbed down to help her. Thank you for dinner, Eleanor said formally. Thank you for coming, Caleb replied. Then he cupped her face in his rough hands, gentle, so gentle despite his size. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. Think about us, he said softly, and kissed her, not rough, not demanding, tender like she was precious, fragile something to be savored. His lips moved against hers with careful heat, exploring, questioning. Eleanor's hands came up pressed against his chest. She meant to push him away. Instead, her fingers curled into his shirt, holding on. When he pulled back, Jacob was there. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his touch feather-light. "May I?" She should say no, should slap him, should run. "Yes," she whispered. Jacob's kiss was different, deeper, hungrier, but still controlled. Like he was holding back tremendous force, banking a fire that could consume them both. His hand slid to her waist, pulled her closer. Eleanor melted into him, her body betraying everything her mind insisted was true. When he released her, she stood trembling on the sidewalk, lips, swollen, heart racing. "Dream about what we could build," Jacob said quietly. "All three of us," Caleb added. Then they were gone, the wagon disappearing into darkness, leaving Eleanor with the taste of them on her lips, and a choice that would define everything. She touched her mouth, felt the heat still lingering there, and realized with absolute terror that some part of her, some wild, desperate, honest part, already knew what her answer would be. Eleanor didn't sleep. She lay in the narrow bed at the boarding house, staring at the ceiling, her lips still burning from those kisses. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw them, Caleb's intensity, Jacob's careful restraint, both of them looking at her like she was water in the desert. This was madness, complete madness. But when dawn broke through her window, she was already dressed, pacing the small room like a caged animal. She'd made a decision sometime in those sleepless hours. Maybe not the final decision, but a decision nonetheless. She was going back to the ranch. Martha knocked at 7, brought coffee and biscuits Eleanor couldn't eat. "You look like hell," the older woman said bluntly. "I feel like hell." "The twins do that to people." Martha set the tray down, studied her. "You going out there today? How did you—" "Girl, I've seen that look before. You're hooked. Might not admit it yet, but you're hooked." Eleanor's hands shook around the coffee cup. "I just want to see the books. Understand the business. That's all." "Keep telling yourself that." Martha moved toward the door, paused. "Fair warning, once you start down this path, it gets harder to turn back. Make sure you know what you're choosing." "I don't know anything anymore," Eleanor whispered. "Then maybe it's time to find out." The knock came at 8 sharp, confident. Eleanor opened the door to find Jacob standing there, hat in hand, morning sun catching in his dark hair. "Morning," he said softly. "Thought you might want to ride out to the ranch." "How did you know I'd want to come?" His smile was slow, knowing. "Because you didn't sleep either. I can see it in your eyes." Eleanor grabbed her shawl, followed him down to the waiting wagon. The morning air was cool, sharp with sage and dust. Jacob helped her up, his hands at her waist again, careful and warm. She told herself to pull away. Didn't. They rode in silence for the first mile. Then Eleanor said, "Tell me about your mother." Jacob's hands tightened on the reins. "Why?" "Because you mentioned her last night. Because I need to understand why you're proposing this arrangement." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, her name was Margaret. She was beautiful, not just pretty, but beautiful in the way that makes men stupid. Our father saw her, wanted her, married her within a month. She was 17. He was 35. Eleanor listened, watching his profile. He owned a small farm in Missouri. Not much, but enough to survive. First year of marriage was good from what she told us later. Then he started drinking, started losing money, started taking his failures out on her with his fists. She couldn't leave. Where would she go? Her parents were dead. She had no money, no skills beyond keeping house. And the law— his voice turned bitter. The law said she was his property. He could beat her bloody every night and no one could stop him. "I'm sorry," Eleanor said quietly. "Caleb and I tried to protect her. Got between them when we could. But we were just kids. He'd knock us down, lock us outside, do whatever he wanted." Jacob's jaw clenched. "She died when we were 17. Doctor said pneumonia, but we knew better. He'd beaten the life out of her piece by piece until there was nothing left to fight. The wagon rolled on. Eleanor's throat ached. "We buried her in the spring," Jacob continued. "Stood over her grave and swore we'd never be like him. Never own a woman. Never divide our loyalty between each other and a wife. If we married, it would be together equal partnership or nothing at all." "That's why you want this," Eleanor said, understanding clicking into place. "Not because of some perverse desire, because you're trying to build something different." "Yes." Jacob looked at her finally, his blue eyes fierce. "We want a partner, Eleanor. Someone who has real power in her own life. Someone who can tell us to go to hell if we're wrong. Someone who chooses this because she wants it, not because she's trapped." "But I am trapped," Eleanor said. "My father's bankrupt. I have no money, no prospects. Where's the choice in that?" "The choice is in how you respond," Jacob said. "You could go back east, find some clerk willing to marry you for your pretty face, spend your life keeping house and bearing children and having no say in anything. Or you could stay here, take a risk, build something that matters. Same circumstances, different choices." Eleanor stared at her hands. He was right. She hated that he was right. The ranch appeared ahead. In daylight, it looked even more impressive: buildings, well-maintained fences, straight. Everything speaking of hard work and careful planning. Caleb stood by the main corral, working with a young horse on a lead line. He looked up when the wagon approached, his eyes finding Eleanor immediately. "You came," he said. Statement, not question. "I want to see the books." His mouth curved. "Figured you might." He handed the lead to a ranch hand, a lean man with weather-beaten skin, who nodded respectfully at Eleanor. "This is Tom. He's been with us 5 years. Tom, this is Miss Ashford." "Ma'am?" Tom touched his hat brim. "How many hands do you employ?" Eleanor asked. 8 full-time, Caleb said. "More during roundup and branding. We pay fair wages, provide bunk and board. No one works here who doesn't earn their keep." Jacob climbed down, helped Eleanor from the wagon. "Books are in the office. This way." The office was a small room off the main house desk, filing cabinets, ledgers, stacked neatly on shelves. Everything organized, professional. Caleb pulled out the current year's ledger, set it on the desk. "This is everything," he said. "Income, expenses, purchases, sales. Nothing hidden." Eleanor sat, opened the ledger. The handwriting was clear. The columns balanced, every transaction documented. She ran her finger down the entries, her mind shifting into the familiar rhythm of numbers and calculations. Income from cattle sales. Expenses for feed equipment, wages. Loan payments, wait. "You have a mortgage?" she asked sharply. "On 2,000 acres of the land," Caleb confirmed. "Bought it 3 years ago. We're paying it down faster than required, but yes, we carry debt." "How much?" 8,000. We'll have it paid off in 4 years at current rate." Eleanor kept reading. The ranch was profitable, very profitable. Income exceeded expenses by a comfortable margin. But there were risks, too. Drought could kill the grass. Disease could wipe out the herd. Markets could crash. "What happens if you have a bad year?" she asked. "We plan for it," Jacob said. He pulled out another ledger. "This is our reserve fund. We keep 6 months' operating expenses liquid at all times. Haven't had to touch it yet, but it's there." Eleanor studied the second ledger. They were telling the truth, disciplined, careful building for the long term rather than quick profit. She looked up at them. "This is good work. Really good. Most ranchers I knew in Boston operated on hope and borrowed money. You're actually running a business." "Because we built it from nothing," Caleb said. "Every dollar matters when you start with empty pockets." "My father could have learned from you," Eleanor said quietly. Too quietly. The twins exchanged looks. Then Caleb pulled out a chair, sat across from her. "Tell us about your father." "Why?" "Because you're angry at him. We can see it. And if you're going to be part of this family, we need to understand why." Eleanor's hands clenched on the ledger. Family. They kept using that word like it was already decided, like she'd already said yes. He was weak, she said finally. Not stupid weak. He made risky investments because other men pressured him. Extended credit to people he knew couldn't pay because he wanted to be liked. And when it all collapsed, he didn't fight. He just gave up. Sent me away like a piece of furniture he couldn't afford to keep. He was trying to protect you, Jacob said gently. He was protecting himself. Eleanor's voice cracked. He didn't want to watch me starve. Didn't want the guilt of my suffering on his conscience. So he shipped me west and told himself he'd done the responsible thing. Caleb leaned forward. Are you angry because he sent you away? Or because part of you wanted to go? Eleanor's breath caught. The words hit too close to truth she hadn't admitted even to herself. I wanted to escape, she whispered. Boston was suffocating me. Every rule, every expectation, every proper thing I was supposed to do. I felt like I was dying by inches. She looked up at them, tears burning her eyes. Does that make me a terrible person? That I was almost grateful when everything collapsed? No, Caleb said firmly. It makes you honest. It makes you like us, Jacob added. We left home the day after our mother's funeral. Didn't look back. Felt guilty for years about being relieved. But sometimes you have to let the old life burn to build a new one. Eleanor wiped her eyes roughly. I don't cry. I never cry. Everyone cries, Caleb said. You've just been too busy surviving to let yourself. She laughed, sharp and broken. Then Caleb did something unexpected. He reached across the desk, took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm, completely engulfing her smaller hand. Stay today, he said quietly. Spend time here. See how the ranch works. Meet the hands. Then tonight, if you want, we'll talk more. Really talk. No pressure. No expectations. Just honest conversation about what this could be. Eleanor looked at their joined hands. She should pull away. Instead, she held on. All right, she said. I'll stay. The morning dissolved into work. The twins didn't coddle her, didn't treat her like a delicate eastern flower. Caleb brought her out to the corrals, showed her the breeding stock massive bulls with curved horns, cows heavy with calves. Jacob took her through the barn, explained their system for rotating pastures, managing water rights, preventing overgrazing. You're not just running cattle, Eleanor observed. You're managing an ecosystem. Exactly, Jacob said, pleased. Most ranchers just turn stock loose, let them eat everything to dirt. We rotate, let the land recover. Takes more work, but it's sustainable. Smart. We try. By noon, Eleanor's dress was dusty, her hair coming loose from its pins, sweat trickling down her back. She didn't care. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt useful, real. Like what she thought and said actually mattered. They ate lunch with the ranch hands, simple food, rough jokes, easy camaraderie. The men treated the twins with respect, but not fear, and they looked at Eleanor with open curiosity, clearly wondering who she was and what she was doing there. Miss Ashford's considering joining the operation, Caleb said casually. Might be handling the books, managing accounts. Tom, the lean ranch hand, nodded slowly. About time you got someone organized up here. Your filing system's a disaster. It works, Jacob protested. It works for you because you remember everything, Tom said. Rest of us can't find anything. The men laughed. Eleanor found herself smiling despite everything. After lunch, Caleb saddled 3 horses. Ever ridden? He asked Eleanor. A little. In Boston. Very sedately through parks. This won't be sedate. He brought over a gray mare smaller than the other horses with kind eyes. This is Dove. She's gentle. Won't throw you unless you do something stupid. Comforting, Eleanor said dryly. Jacob helped her mount his hands at her waist again, lifting her easily into the saddle. Eleanor grabbed the pommel, heart racing. The ground looked very far away. Relax, Caleb said, swinging onto his own horse with fluid grace. Tension makes horses nervous. Just breathe. They rode out across the ranch, moving slow for Eleanor's sake. The land stretched endlessly, rolling hills, scattered pine grass rippling in the wind. Hawks circled overhead. In the distance, mountains rose sharp and white. 5,000 acres, Caleb said, gesturing. From that ridge to the creek, north to the county road, all of it ours. Ours, Jacob corrected, looking at Eleanor. If you stay. The word hung between them. Ours, partnership, family. Eleanor's hands tightened on the reins. Why me? She asked suddenly. You said you've turned down every woman in 3 counties. What made you write to my father? What made you think I'd be different? The twins looked at each other, that silent communication again. Then Caleb spoke. 2 years ago, your father came west on business. Banking stuff, establishing credit lines for ranchers. We met him at a meeting in Denver. He talked about you constantly. His brilliant daughter who kept his books better than any clerk. His beautiful girl who asked questions that made him think. His secret weapon, he called you. Eleanor's breath caught. Her father had said that about her. He showed us your photograph, Jacob continued. But it wasn't the photograph that hooked us. It was the way he described you, fierce, curious, too smart for Boston society. We thought if even half of what he said was true, you'd be exactly what we needed. So, you waited, Eleanor said slowly. Until he went bankrupt. Until I was desperate enough to consider this. No, Caleb said sharply. We waited until the opportunity presented itself. Your father wrote to us first, Eleanor. We didn't seek you out, but when his letter arrived, we saw a chance to offer you something real, something worth having. You mean you saw a chance to get what you wanted? Eleanor shot back. Yes, Jacob said bluntly. We're not going to lie about that. We want you in our home, in our bed, in our life. But we're offering you something in return, power, partnership, freedom. That's more honest than most marriages. Eleanor urged Dove forward, needing space to think. The mare responded smoothly, breaking into an easy trot. Behind her, she heard the twins following, giving her room, but staying close enough to catch her if she fell. She wouldn't fall. She refused to fall. They rode for an hour, Caleb and Jacob pointing out landmarks, explaining property boundaries, discussing future plans. A new barn. More breeding stock. Maybe sheep in the high pastures. They talked to her like she'd be there to see it all, like her opinion mattered in these decisions. Like she'd already said yes. We should head back, Jacob said finally. Sun's getting low. The ride back was quieter. Eleanor's thighs ached from the saddle, her back hurt. Her hands were blistered from the reins. She felt more alive than she had in years. At the barn, Caleb helped her dismount. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground. He steadied her, his hands firm on her waist. You did well, he said quietly. Most first-timers can barely walk after an hour in the saddle. I'm tougher than I look. We know. His blue eyes searched her face. Do you see it yet? See what? What you could be here. What we could build together. Eleanor's heart hammered. Because yes, God help her, yes, she was starting to see it. Not the scandal, not the sin, but the possibility, the freedom, the chance to be something more than she'd ever been allowed to be. I need to think, she said. Then think over dinner, Jacob said, appearing with a bucket of water. We're not letting you go back to town on an empty stomach. They ate on the porch this time, watching the sun set over the mountains. Beef stew and fresh bread and strong coffee. The food tasted better than anything Eleanor remembered eating in Boston's finest restaurants. Tell me about the people in town, she said. If I did this, how would they react? Caleb and Jacob exchanged looks. Honestly, Caleb said, some would disapprove. The preacher definitely. A few of the older women. But most folks out here mind their own business. Life's too hard to waste energy judging other people's choices. And the law? As long as we're discreet, Jacob said, the law won't care. We'd marry you legally, one of us. The other would just be your business partner officially. What happens in our home is our business. Who would I marry legally? The twins looked at each other. Your choice, Caleb said. We talked about it. Either of us would be proud to sign the papers, but you should choose who you're more comfortable with. Eleanor set down her coffee cup, her hands shaking. This is insane. You know that, right? Completely insane. Probably, Jacob agreed, but the best things usually are. The sun dropped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson and purple. Eleanor watched the colors shift and change, her mind churning. I want one more day, she said finally. One more day to think, to pray, to be absolutely certain. Then I'll give you my answer. Take what you need, Caleb said. But Eleanor. Jacob leaned forward, his eyes intense. Whatever you decide, decide for yourself. Not because of your father's debts. Not because you feel trapped. Because you want this. Because you see what we see, 3 people building something that matters. Eleanor met his gaze, saw the absolute sincerity there. And if my answer is no, then we'll respect it, Caleb said. We'll hate it. We'll spend the rest of our lives wondering what might have been. But we'll respect it. They drove her back to town in the darkness. The 3 of them squeezed onto the wagon bench. Eleanor sat between them, hyper-aware of their warmth, their size, their presence. Neither touched her beyond what was necessary, but she felt them anyway, solid, patient waiting. At the boarding house, they both climbed down. Caleb took her hand, raised it to his lips. Not a kiss exactly, just his mouth pressed against her knuckles, warm and gentle. Thank you for today, he said. Jacob took her other hand, turned it over, kissed her palm. The gesture was more intimate than anything that had come before. Eleanor's breath hitched. Dream of us, he said quietly. And when you wake up, listen to what your heart says. Not your fear, not society's rules. Your heart. Then they were gone, leaving Eleanor standing in the cool night air, her hands tingling where they'd kissed her. Her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break her ribs. She went upstairs, lit the lamp, sat on the bed. Pulled out the letter her father had tucked into her trunk, the one she'd been too angry to open. Her hands shook as she broke the seal. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, you've reached Colorado and met the Chamberlain brothers. I pray they are everything I remember: honorable, hard-working, decent men in a land that often rewards neither honor nor decency. I have failed you. I know this. A father's duty is to protect his daughter, to provide for her, to ensure her future. I have done none of these things. My weakness, my poor judgment, my inability to stand firm when it mattered, all of it has led to your current circumstances. But know this. I did not send you west because I don't love you. I sent you west because I love you too much to watch you starve in Boston, to see you reduced to servitude or worse. The Chamberlains can give you what I cannot: security, respect, a chance at real happiness. They will offer you something unusual, something society would condemn. I cannot tell you what to choose, but I can tell you this conventional marriage has not served our family well. Your mother was miserable until the day she died, bound to me by law, but never by love. Perhaps unconventional happiness is better than conventional misery. Whatever you decide, know that I am proud of you. You are stronger, smarter, braver than I ever was. You will survive this. More than survive, you will thrive. Choose courage, my darling girl. Choose life. Choose whatever brings you joy, regardless of what the world thinks. With all my love, your father. Eleanor read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Her father had known. He'd known what the twins would propose, had known she'd be shocked and horrified and tempted, and he'd given her permission not to obey, but to choose. Choose courage. Choose life. She folded the letter carefully, pressed it against her chest. Outside her window, stars blazed in the Colorado sky, more stars than she'd ever seen in Boston, where city lights dimmed everything to gray. Out here, everything was sharper, brighter, more real. She thought about the ranch, the work, the easy respect the twins showed their employees. Thought about Caleb's careful hands steadying her, Jacob's patient teaching. Thought about ledgers, she could balance decisions, she could help make a life she could actively build, instead of just enduring. Thought about those kisses, Caleb's tender intensity, Jacob's controlled hunger. The way they looked at her like she was precious and powerful all at once. She thought about freedom. Real freedom. The kind that came not from following rules, but from choosing her own path. Consequences be damned. Eleanor stood, moved to the window, stared out at the darkness. Somewhere out there, two men were probably lying awake wondering what her answer would be. Hoping. Waiting. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, felt her heart steady and settle. She knew what her answer would be. She'd known since that first kiss, if she was honest with herself. Maybe even before that, when they'd looked at her in the street, like she was someone worth wanting. Worth fighting for. Tomorrow she'd tell them. Tonight she'd let herself imagine it, waking up in that ranch house, riding across those endless acres, building something that lasted. Not alone. Never alone again. 3 lives woven into one. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, for the first time since leaving Boston, Eleanor felt something that might have been peace. Or maybe just the beginning of hope. Eleanor woke before dawn. Her decision crystallized in the cool morning air. No more waiting. No more fear. She dressed quickly in her green silk, the same dress she'd worn that first dinner, like armor against her own doubt. Her hands didn't shake as she pinned up her hair. Her reflection in the mirror showed someone different than the terrified girl who'd stepped off that stagecoach 5 days ago. 5 days. That's all it had taken to upend everything she'd ever believed about herself. She was downstairs before Martha had the coffee ready. The older woman took one look at her face and nodded slowly. "You're going to tell them yes." "How did you—" "Because you look like someone who just jumped off a cliff and discovered she could fly." Martha poured 2 cups, handed one to Eleanor. "You sure about this?" "No," Eleanor said honestly. "But I'm doing it anyway. That's the only way anything worthwhile gets done." Martha sipped her coffee, studying Eleanor over the rim. "They're good men. Better than most. But this won't be easy. People will talk, judge, make your life difficult. People in Boston already made my life difficult. At least here I'll have something worth fighting for." Martha's weathered face softened. "Then go get it, girl, before you lose your nerve." Eleanor didn't wait for the twins to send a wagon. She walked the 3 miles to the ranch, her boots kicking up dust, the rising sun warm on her shoulders. The walk gave her time to rehearse what she'd say, though every practiced word felt inadequate. How did you tell 2 men you'd accepted their impossible proposal, that you were choosing scandal and sin and the terrifying possibility of happiness? The ranch came into view just as the sun cleared the mountains. Caleb stood by the corral working with a young colt. Jacob was splitting wood near the house, his shirt already dark with sweat. They both stopped when they saw her approaching on foot. Caleb reached her first, his long strides eating up the distance. "Eleanor, what are you doing walking?" "We were about to send the wagon." "I couldn't wait," she interrupted. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I needed to see you both. Now." Jacob dropped the axe, moved to join them. Both men were dusty, sweaty, smelling of horses and work and sun-warmed skin. Both stared at her with identical expressions of cautious hope. "Tell us," Caleb said quietly. Eleanor took a breath, held it, let it out slow. "My father sent me a letter. I read it last night. He said I should choose courage, choose life, choose whatever brings me joy." "And what brings you joy?" Jacob asked, his voice rough. "I don't know yet," Eleanor admitted. I've never been allowed to find out. Every choice in my life has been made for me: what to wear, how to act, who to speak to, what to think. Even coming here was my father's choice, not mine." "So this is you choosing," Caleb said. Not a question. Understanding. "Yes." Eleanor looked between them, these impossible men with their impossible proposal. "I'm choosing you, both of you, not because I'm trapped, not because I have no other options, but because I want this, because I see what you're offering, and I want to be brave enough to take it." The silence stretched like pulled wire. Then Caleb made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and grabbed her, lifting her off her feet, spinning her around. Eleanor yelped, clutching his shoulders. "You mean it?" His voice cracked. "You're saying yes." "I'm saying yes," she confirmed. He set her down carefully, his hands framing her face. "You won't regret this. I swear to God, Eleanor, we'll spend the rest of our lives making sure you don't regret this." Then Jacob was there too, pulling her into his arms, pressing his face into her hair. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for trusting us." Eleanor stood between them, wrapped in their warmth, their strength, their absolute relief, and felt for the first time in her life like she was exactly where she belonged. "So what happens now?" she asked when they finally released her. "Now," Caleb said, "we get you married before you change your mind." Eleanor laughed shakily. "That fast?" "We've waited 2 years for the right woman," Jacob said. "We're not waiting another minute longer than necessary." "But I need time to prepare, to think about, to talk yourself out of it," Caleb finished. "No, we do this today, this morning, before fear catches up with courage." "You can't just get married in a morning," Eleanor protested. "There are arrangements, legal documents, a ceremony." "The preacher's in town," Jacob said. "We checked yesterday, and the legal documents take 10 minutes at the courthouse. We can be married by noon." "That's insane." "That's efficient," Caleb corrected. He took her hand, squeezed it. "Unless you need more time, we'll give it to you if you do, but I think you're ready. I think you've been ready since we kissed you 3 nights ago." He was right. Eleanor knew he was right. Every hour of waiting would just give her fear more time to grow, more opportunities to second-guess, more chances to retreat into the safety of convention. "All right," she heard herself say. "Today. But I need a bath first. And clean clothes. I'm not getting married smelling like a 3-mile walk in the dust." Jacob grinned. "We'll heat water. You can use the bathing room here." "And clothes." Eleanor gestured at her worn green silk. "This is the best I have, and it's beautiful," Caleb interrupted. "You're beautiful. But if you want something new, Martha keeps a few dresses at the boarding house for women passing through. We'll send Tom to fetch whatever fits." "You've thought of everything," Eleanor said faintly. "We've had 2 years to think," Jacob reminded her. "Come on, let's get you ready to become Mrs. Chamberlain." The next hours blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. Jacob heated water while Caleb rode to town for the preacher and courthouse clerk. Tom was dispatched to Martha's for a dress. Eleanor bathed in a copper tub in the small room off the kitchen, scrubbing away dust and doubt and the last traces of her Boston life. Martha herself appeared an hour later carrying an armload of fabric. "Heard you need a wedding dress." "How did you—" "Tom talks. And honestly, girl, the whole town probably knows by now. News travels fast when the Chamberlain twins finally decide to marry." Martha shook out a dress, pale blue cotton, simple but pretty, with lace at the collar and cuffs. "This should fit. Belonged to a woman who passed through last year, decided to stay married, a prospector. She left it as payment for the room." Eleanor touched the soft fabric. "It's perfect." "Good. Now let's get you dressed before those boys burst from impatience." Martha helped her into the dress. It fit almost perfectly, just a touch loose at the waist. She braided Eleanor's hair, wound it into a crown, tucked in wildflowers Tom had picked from the meadow. When Eleanor looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The pale, frightened Boston girl was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, surer. "You look beautiful," Martha said softly. And terrified. That's appropriate for a bride. I don't know what I'm doing, Eleanor admitted. I don't know how to be a wife, especially a wife to two men. No one knows how to be a wife until they are one. You'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. That's what partnership means, figuring it out together. Martha squeezed her shoulder. You're doing the right thing. I can see it in your eyes. You're choosing life. Just like her father's letter said. Caleb returned with the preacher, a thin man in his 50s with kind eyes and a resigned expression. He looked at Eleanor, at the twins, back at Eleanor. You're certain about this, miss? Yes, Eleanor said firmly. You understand these men are brothers, that marrying one while living with both is unconventional, Jacob interrupted smoothly. We understand that, Preacher Davies. We're not asking you to bless anything beyond the legal marriage between my brother and Miss Ashford. What happens in our household afterward is our business. The preacher sighed. I've been in Colorado 15 years, seen stranger arrangements than this, and I've seen the way you boys run your ranch fair, honest, good to your people. If Miss Ashford is willing, I'll perform the ceremony. But I won't pretend I approve of what comes after. We're not asking for approval, Caleb said. Just your signature on the license. Which one of you is she marrying? The twins looked at Eleanor. Your choice, Caleb said quietly. Eleanor's heart raced. This moment mattered legally, practically. One of them would be her husband in the eyes of the law. One would be her husband only in their hearts. She studied them both. Caleb blunt and direct, his intensity burning just beneath the surface. Jacob quieter, but no less fierce, his passion controlled and banked. She loved no, that wasn't right yet. She didn't love them, but she could see herself loving them both given time. Jacob, she said finally. I'll marry Jacob. Caleb showed no hurt, just nodded. Good choice. He's more romantic. I'm just practical. You're both impossible, Eleanor said, but she was smiling. They stood in the main room of the ranch house. No church, no guests, just the five of them. Martha, Tom, and two other ranch hands served as witnesses. Preacher Davies opened his worn Bible, cleared his throat. We're gathered here in the sight of God. Can we skip to the important parts? Jacob interrupted. No offense, preacher, but I've waited long enough. Davies frowned. Marriage is a sacred... We know it's sacred, Caleb said. That's why we're doing it. But we don't need a sermon, just the vows. The preacher sighed again, flipped pages. Fine. Jacob Chamberlain. Do you take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife to have and to hold from this day forward? I do. Jacob's voice was steady, absolute. Eleanor Ashford, do you take this man as your lawfully wedded husband? Eleanor looked at Jacob, his blue eyes intense, his jaw tight with emotion. Behind him, Caleb watched with equal intensity. Both of them. She was choosing both of them. I do, she said. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I pronounce you husband and wife. God help you both. Davies snapped his Bible shut. There. Done. I'll file the papers in town. Jacob didn't wait for permission. He grabbed Eleanor, pulled her close, kissed her hard. Not gentle like before, this was possession claim, relief, all mixed together. Eleanor kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, her heart pounding. When they broke apart, Caleb was there. He cupped her face, his touch tender despite the hunger in his eyes. My turn, he said. This kiss was different, slower, deeper, like he was memorizing the taste of her. When he pulled back, Eleanor was breathless, dizzy, her lips swollen. Welcome to the family, he said softly. Martha stepped forward, hugged Eleanor tight. Congratulations, honey. You just did the bravest thing you'll ever do. Or the stupidest, Eleanor whispered. Same thing usually. Martha released her, looked at the twins. You boys take care of her. She's choosing to trust you. Don't make her regret it. Never, they said in unison. The preacher left quickly, clearly uncomfortable. The ranch hands congratulated them, genuine smiles, respectful nods. Tom shook Jacob's hand, then Caleb's, then carefully took Eleanor's. "Welcome, ma'am. Glad to have you here." "Thank you, Tom." "We'll give you folks some privacy," Tom said, herding the other hands toward the door. "Congratulations again." Then they were gone. Martha followed, pausing in the doorway. "I'll see you in town tomorrow, Eleanor. We'll talk then." The door closed. Silence filled the house, heavy with possibility and fear, and the weight of what they'd just done. Eleanor stood between the twins, her new husband, and her what? Her second husband. Her partner. There were no words for what Caleb was to her now. "So," she said, her voice shaking, "what happens now?" "Now," Jacob said, taking her hand, "we start our life together." "All three of us," Caleb added, taking her other hand. Eleanor looked between them, saw the same question in both sets of eyes. They were waiting for her to set the pace to decide what came next. The power was hers. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. "I need to eat something," she said abruptly. "I haven't eaten since yesterday and I'm about to faint." The tension broke. Jacob laughed, relieved. "Practical. I like that." They fed her cold chicken and bread in the kitchen, all three of them standing at the counter because sitting seemed too formal, too normal for what they'd just done. Eleanor ate mechanically, her mind spinning. "Are you all right?" Caleb asked quietly. "I just married 2 men," Eleanor said. "Well, married one, and committed to both of you. No, I'm not all right. I'm terrified." "Good," Jacob said. "We're terrified too." Eleanor looked at him surprised. "You are?" "Hell yes. We just took responsibility for your happiness, your safety, your entire future. That's terrifying." He set down his food, turned to face her fully. "But we're going to do everything in our power to make this work. To make you happy. I swear that, Eleanor. We both do." "We need rules," Eleanor said suddenly. "Boundaries. We can't just figure this out as we go. I need structure." "All right," Caleb said. "What kind of rules?" Eleanor's mind raced. "Honesty. Complete honesty between all three of us. No secrets, no lies, even small ones. If this is going to work, we have to trust each other absolutely." "Agreed," both men said. "And privacy. I need my own space, a room that's mine where I can be alone when I need to be." "You can have the spare bedroom," Jacob said immediately. "We'll move the storage out today." "And decisions?" Eleanor continued, gaining confidence. "Important decisions get discussed by all three of us. Equal voice like you promised. I won't be outvoted just because you're brothers and I'm not." "Never," Caleb said firmly. "Your voice carries the same weight as ours, always." Eleanor took a breath. "And the intimate aspects. I need time to adjust, to be comfortable with both of you. I can't just—" "We'll go at your pace," Jacob said gently. "No pressure, no expectations. When you're ready, you let us know." "But we will be sharing a bed eventually," Eleanor forced herself to ask. "All three of us." "That's what you want." "That's what we hope for," Caleb said. "Eventually, but only when you want it too. We're not animals, Eleanor. We can wait." Eleanor's hands shook. She set down her plate before she dropped it. "I don't know how to do this. Any of this. I don't know how to be a wife, much less a wife to 2 men. I don't know the first thing about running a ranch household or managing finances or—" Jacob caught her hands, held them steady. "You know how to keep books. We've seen your work. You know how to ask questions, learn new things, face challenges. That's all you need. The rest, we'll figure out together." "What if I can't do this?" Eleanor whispered. "What if I made a terrible mistake?" "Then we'll unmake it," Caleb said. His voice was serious, no trace of the usual confidence. "If you're truly miserable, if this truly doesn't work, we'll figure something out. We won't trap you here, but give it a real chance first. Give us a chance." Eleanor looked between them, saw the vulnerability in their eyes. They were as scared as she was. Maybe more. They'd invested 2 years of hope into this moment. 2 years of waiting, planning, dreaming. And she could destroy it all with a single word. She didn't want to destroy it. She wanted desperately to make it work. "I'll give it a chance," she said. "A real chance. But you have to be patient with me. I'm going to make mistakes. Say the wrong things. Do things wrong." "So will we," Jacob said. "That's what learning looks like." Eleanor nodded slowly. Her heart still raced, but the panic was fading, replaced by something that might have been determination. "Show me the house. All of it. If I'm going to live here, I need to know every corner." They walked her through the ranch house, explaining, answering questions, making space for her presence. The main room with its stone fireplace and comfortable furniture. The kitchen larger than she'd expected, with good equipment and organized shelves. The room that had been storage, but would become hers, dusty now, but with a good window and enough space for a bed dresser writing desk. "We'll have furniture built," Caleb said. "Whatever you need." "And this," Jacob said, pushing open the last door, "is our room." Eleanor stepped inside, her heart in her throat. Large bed, big enough for 3, she realized with a jolt. Simple furniture. Windows facing the mountains. Everything clean and masculine and somehow waiting for her feminine touch. "I'm not ready," she said quickly. "To share this room. Not yet." "We know," Jacob said. "Your room is yours for as long as you need it. No pressure." But they both looked at the bed, and Eleanor knew they were imagining the same thing she was. The 3 of them tangled together, barrier between them, finally broken. The thought made her face burn, and her body react in ways she didn't want to examine yet. "I should unpack," she said, retreating to safer ground. "Get settled." "Tom brought your trunk from the boarding house," Caleb said. "It's in your room." They left her alone to unpack, to process, to catch her breath. Eleanor opened her trunk, stared at the meager contents. 3 dresses, some undergarments, a few books, her father's letter. Her entire life reduced to this. No, not reduced, transformed. This was a new life, a new beginning. She hung her dresses in the empty wardrobe, lined up her books on the windowsill, placed her father's letter carefully in the top drawer of the dresser. Then she sat on the bare mattress Caleb had promised to bring fresh linens, and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. Terror, excitement, doubt, hope, relief, panic. All of it swirling together until she couldn't tell one emotion from another. A knock at the door. "Eleanor, come in." Jacob entered, carrying an armload of linens. "Thought you might want to make up your bed." Eleanor stood, helped him spread sheets and blankets. They worked in silence, the domestic task oddly intimate. When they finished, Jacob sat on the edge of the mattress, looked up at her. "Are you all right?" "Really?" "I don't know," Eleanor admitted. "Ask me in a week." "Fair enough." He hesitated then. "I meant what I said, about going at your pace. I know this is strange, probably terrifying. But you're safe here, Eleanor. With us. Always. Even though I just married into bigamy. Even though." He smiled faintly. "Maybe especially because of that. Takes courage to break rules that deserve to be broken." Eleanor sat beside him, exhausted suddenly. "My father would be horrified. Your father sent you here knowing what we'd propose. I think he'd understand." "Maybe." Eleanor leaned against Jacob's shoulder, surprising herself. He went very still, like he was afraid any movement might spook her. "Thank you. For being patient with me. Thank you for choosing us." His arm came around her shoulders, careful, giving her space to pull away if she wanted. She didn't want to. "We'll make you happy, Eleanor. I promise." "Don't promise things you can't control," she said. But she stayed leaning against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. They sat like that for long minutes, neither speaking. Then Eleanor straightened. "I should look at the household accounts, figure out what needs to be managed." Tomorrow, Jacob said. Today you rest, adjust, let yourself breathe. I don't know how to just rest. Then I'll teach you. He stood, held out his hand. Come on. I'm going to show you how to do absolutely nothing useful for an entire afternoon. Eleanor let him pull her up, led her outside to the porch. Caleb was there, leaning against the railing, staring at the mountains. He turned when they appeared, his expression softening. She all right? She's getting there, Jacob said. They sat together on the porch steps, Eleanor between them again, watching the sun track across the sky. No one spoke. No one needed to. Sometimes silence was its own kind of communication comfort, without words, presence, without demands. Eleanor felt her racing thoughts slow, her tight muscles relax. These men weren't going to hurt her, weren't going to use her. They were just going to be there, solid, patient, waiting for her to be ready. Maybe that was enough for today. Tomorrow she'd worry about being a wife, managing a household, navigating the scandal. Tomorrow she'd face the town, the judgment, the reality of what she'd chosen. Today she'd just sit here between her two impossible husbands and let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd made the right choice after all. Eleanor, Caleb said quietly. Yes. Welcome home. The words hit her square in the chest. Home. She'd had a house in Boston, but never a home. Never a place that felt like hers, like she belonged, rather than just occupied space. Thank you, she whispered, for taking a chance on me. Thank you, Jacob said, for taking a bigger chance on us. The sun dropped lower, painting everything gold. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. A hawk cried overhead. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of sage and pine and possibility. Eleanor closed her eyes, let the sounds and smells wash over her. Let herself begin to believe that this wild, impossible, terrifying choice might actually become something beautiful, something worth every rule she'd broken to find it. The first week passed in a blur of learning and adjusting, and trying not to panic every time Eleanor remembered what she'd done. She woke each morning in her own room, grateful for the space, but aware of the two men sleeping just down the hall. They were patient, almost too patient. Caleb would knock before entering any room she occupied. Jacob asked permission before touching her even casually. They were treating her like spun glass, and it was starting to drive her crazy. Stop it, she said on the fifth morning when Caleb knocked on the kitchen door, even though she was just making coffee. He paused in the doorway. Stop what? Stop acting like I'm going to shatter. I married you, both of you. I'm not going to run screaming just because you walk into a room without announcing yourself. Caleb and Jacob exchanged one of their silent looks. Then Caleb stepped fully into the kitchen, moved behind her, reached past her for a mug. His body pressed against her back for just a moment, warm, solid, deliberately close. Eleanor's breath caught. Better? He asked, his voice low near her ear. Yes, she managed. He stepped back, poured his coffee, leaned against the counter watching her. We're trying to give you space, not terrify you. You're giving me too much space. I feel like a guest, not a wife. Eleanor turned to face them both. I need you to treat me normally, like I belong here. Not like I'm some fragile thing you have to handle carefully. You do belong here, Jacob said quietly. But Eleanor, you've been married less than a week, to two men, in an arrangement that would get us all arrested in most places. We're trying to let you adjust. I'll adjust faster if you stop tiptoeing around me. She set down her coffee cup, forced herself to meet their eyes. I'm stronger than you think. Stronger than I thought. But I can't prove that if you won't let me. Caleb smiled slowly. All right. No more kid gloves. But you tell us if we push too hard too fast. I will, Eleanor promised. That day marked a shift. Caleb stopped knocking before entering rooms. Jacob pulled her into casual embraces, an arm around her shoulders while explaining something, a hand at her back, guiding her through a doorway. Nothing overtly sexual, but physical in ways that made Eleanor's skin tingle and her heart race. They were claiming her, gradually giving her body time to accept what her mind had already agreed to. The ranch work helped. Eleanor threw herself into learning everything: how to manage the household accounts, coordinate meals for the hands, track inventory and supplies. She rode out with the twins most days, her seat in the saddle improving as her body toughened to the work. Tom taught her to rope. One of the older hands, Miguel, showed her how to read cattle for signs of illness. She was useful here. Needed. It felt good in ways Boston society never had. The town was harder. Eleanor went in with Jacob on the 8th day, needing supplies, and steeling herself for the judgment she knew was coming. Martha greeted her warmly at the general store, but other women turned away, whispers following Eleanor like smoke. "Ignore them," Jacob said quietly, his hand at her back. "Hard to ignore when they're so obvious about it." "They're jealous," Martha said, appearing with a bolt of fabric. "Half the women in this town have been throwing themselves at the Chamberlain twins for years. You waltz in and catch them both. Of course they're bitter." "I didn't catch anyone," Eleanor protested. You just said yes when everyone else said no." Martha's eyes twinkled. Smart girl. Preacher Davies passed them on the street, his face tight with disapproval. "Mrs. Chamberlain," he said stiffly. "Preacher." Eleanor kept her chin up, refused to show shame. "I trust you're settling in at the ranch." "Very well, thank you." "And you're comfortable with the arrangement?" Jacob's hand tightened at Eleanor's waist. She put her own hand over his, a silent message to stay calm. "I'm happy, Preacher Davies. Happier than I've been in years." He looked like he wanted to argue, to lecture, to condemn. Instead, he just nodded stiffly and walked away. "That wasn't so bad," Eleanor said. "Give it time," Jacob muttered. "He's probably composing a sermon about sin and modern morality right now." But not everyone judged. Old Mrs. Chen from the laundry smiled and waved. Tom's wife, a practical woman named Sarah, stopped to chat about preserving vegetables for winter. The banker, a portly man named Henderson, congratulated Jacob on his marriage and asked if Eleanor might be interested in reviewing his bookkeeping systems. "I'd be happy to," Eleanor said, surprised. "Excellent. Come by the bank next week. I'll pay you, of course. Good bookkeepers are rare out here." As they drove home, Eleanor turned to Jacob. "Did he just offer me a job?" "Sounds like it." "But I'm a woman. And I'm married. Why would he—" "Because you're good with numbers and he needs help. Out here, ability matters more than gender." Jacob glanced at her. "You want to do it?" "I think I do," Eleanor said slowly. "It would give me something that's mine, my own work, my own money." "Then do it. We'll support whatever you choose." Eleanor leaned against his shoulder, feeling something warm unfurl in her chest. Support, partnership, freedom, everything they'd promised they were delivering. That night, Eleanor knocked on the twins' bedroom door. Her heart hammered, but she forced herself to stand still when Caleb opened it. He wore only trousers, his chest bare, his hair damp from washing. Eleanor's mouth went dry. "Eleanor, everything all right?" "I want to talk, to both of you." Jacob appeared behind his brother, equally undressed. Eleanor's eyes skittered away, her face heating. This was her husband. These were her husbands. She needed to get comfortable with them. "Come in," Jacob said gently. Eleanor stepped into their room, perched on the edge of a chair. The twins sat on the bed, giving her space, waiting. "I've been thinking," she started, her hands twisting in her lap, "about us, about this arrangement, about what I want versus what I'm afraid of." "And what are you afraid of?" Caleb asked. "Everything," Eleanor admitted. "I'm afraid of being hurt, of being used, of discovering this was all a mistake. I'm afraid of the physical aspects. I don't know anything about that, about being with a man, much less two men. I'm afraid of losing myself in this, of becoming just a wife instead of a person." "Those are valid fears," Jacob said quietly. "What do you want?" Eleanor took a breath. "I want to stop being afraid. I want to move forward. I want to understand what this can be between the three of us. But I need honesty. I need to know what you expect from me. What you want." The twins looked at each other. Then Caleb leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "We want you, Eleanor, in every way. We want you in our bed, in our lives, in our decisions. We want to wake up with you between us and fall asleep the same way. We want children eventually if you're willing. We want to build an empire with you, not just land and cattle, but a real legacy. And we want you happy," Jacob added. "That's not negotiable. If sharing a bed makes you miserable, we adjust. If you need your own space, we give it. But what we hope for, what we dream about, is you comfortable with both of us, loving both of us, belonging to both of us the way we belong to you." Eleanor's throat tightened. "I don't know if I can do that. Be with both of you. I barely understand being with one man." "Then we teach you," Caleb said simply. "We take it slow. We make sure you're ready for each step before we take the next one." "What if I'm never ready?" "Then we adjust," Jacob repeated. "But I don't think that's going to be the problem. I think you're braver than you believe. You just need time to discover it." Eleanor stood, moved closer. Her hands shook, but she forced herself to reach out to touch Caleb's bare shoulder. His skin was warm, the muscle beneath firm. He went very still under her hand. "I want to try," she whispered. "I want to be brave, but I need you to be patient. I need you to show me what to do." Caleb covered her hand with his blue eyes intense. "We'll show you everything. But not tonight. Tonight you go back to your room. You think about what you want. And when you're ready, truly ready, you come to us." "How will I know I'm ready?" "You'll know," Jacob said, "because you won't be able to stay away." Eleanor nodded slowly, withdrew her hand. Her skin tingled where it had touched Caleb's. She wanted more, wanted to stay. But fear still wound tight in her chest, holding her back. "Thank you," she said, "for being patient." "Always," they said together. She left, returned to her room, lay awake for hours, remembering the feel of Caleb's skin, the heat in their eyes, the promise in their words. Her body ached with something she didn't have words for, wanting and fear mixed together, until she couldn't tell which was stronger. The next 2 weeks brought changes. Eleanor started working at the bank 2 days a week, untangling Henderson's chaotic records and implementing proper systems. The work was satisfying, the pay generous, and the respect Henderson showed her was intoxicating. She was good at this. She'd forgotten how good it felt to use her mind to solve problems, to be valued for her abilities rather than her appearance. At the ranch, she learned to cook for hungry men, to manage supplies, to coordinate the complex dance of running a working cattle operation. The hands treated her with respect that bordered on affection. Tom's wife Sarah became a friend, teaching Eleanor practical skills and never once asking invasive questions about her marriage arrangement. And with the twins, Eleanor grew more comfortable. She kissed Caleb goodbye in the mornings without thinking about it. She leaned into Jacob's arms while they reviewed accounts in the evening. She laughed at their jokes, argued with them about business decisions, felt herself becoming part of something larger than herself. But she still slept alone. 3 weeks after the wedding, Eleanor was reviewing inventory in the barn when she heard shouting. She dropped her ledger, ran outside. A group of riders approached, rough-looking men, 6 of them spreading out in front of the house. Caleb and Jacob stood on the porch, their bodies tense. Eleanor moved to join them. Jacob caught her arm. "Stay back." "What's happening?" "Trouble," Caleb said quietly. The lead rider, a big man with a scarred face, spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Chamberlain, heard you finally got yourself a wife." "That's right, McCready. What's it to you?" Just interesting is all. Pretty little thing like her married to both of you. That's against the law, you know. Bigamy. Could get you arrested." Eleanor's heart hammered. Caleb's hand moved to the gun at his hip. Jacob stepped forward, his voice deadly calm. "We're legally married. Papers filed proper. What we do in our private life is our business." "Unless someone makes it everyone's business," McCready said. His smile was ugly. "Could be someone might tell the marshal what's really going on out here. Unless maybe you boys see fit to be more neighborly." "What do you want, McCready?" Caleb's voice was flat. "Water rights. That creek running through your north pasture. I need access." "That creek's on our land. We paid for those water rights fair and square." "Things change. Share the water, and maybe I forget what I know about your unusual marriage." Eleanor felt ice in her veins. Blackmail. McCready was blackmailing them because of her. "Get off our land," Jacob said quietly. "Now. Or what you'll shoot me in front of witnesses." McCready gestured at his men. "I don't think so, Chamberlain." Eleanor stepped forward before she could think better of it. Both twins tried to stop her, but she shook them off. "Mr. McCready," she said, her voice carrying across the yard. "I'm Eleanor Chamberlain. I'm legally married to Jacob Chamberlain. Any relationship I have with Caleb Chamberlain is a private family matter that concerns no one else." "That's a pretty speech, ma'am. Doesn't change the law." "The law requires proof. Do you have proof of anything illegal, or just gossip and assumptions?" Eleanor's hand shook, but her voice stayed steady. "Because if you're making accusations without proof, that's slander, and my husband's lawyer in Denver would be very interested in pursuing damages." McCready's smile faded. "You threatening me? I'm informing you of the legal consequences of your actions. There's a difference." Eleanor moved closer, her fear transforming into anger. "You want water. Buy land with water on it. You want to blackmail us? Bring proof the marshal will actually believe. Otherwise, get off our property before my husbands decide you're trespassing." The silence stretched. McCready's men shifted uncomfortably. Finally, McCready spat again, yanked his horse's head around. "This ain't over, Chamberlain." "Yes, it is," Caleb said coldly. "Don't come back." They rode off in a cloud of dust. The moment they were out of sight, Eleanor's knees buckled. Jacob caught her, held her tight. "Jesus, Eleanor. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen." "I was terrified," she admitted, her voice shaking now. "But I couldn't let him threaten us, threaten our home." Caleb pulled her from Jacob's arms into his own, buried his face in her hair. "You're incredible. You know that, absolutely incredible." "He'll come back," Eleanor said. "Men like that always come back." "Let him try." Jacob's voice was hard. "We'll be ready." But that night, lying in her lonely bed, Eleanor couldn't stop shaking. McCready's threat echoed in her mind. She'd brought this danger to them. Her presence, her choice, her unconventional marriage, it had made them vulnerable. She couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop her racing thoughts. Finally, near midnight, she got up, walked down the hall, stood outside the twins' door, her hand raised to knock, her heart hammering. This was it. The moment she chose to stop being afraid. She knocked. Silence. Then footsteps. The door opened. Caleb stood there in just his trousers, his hair mussed from sleep. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Eleanor, I don't want to be alone tonight," she whispered. "I'm tired of being brave by myself. Can I stay with you?" Caleb stepped back, pulled the door wide. "Always. You can always stay with us." Eleanor stepped inside. Jacob was sitting up in bed, the covers pooled at his waist. Both men watched her, waiting for her to set the pace, to tell them what she needed. "I don't want—" Eleanor's voice broke. "I'm not ready for everything, but I need to not be alone. Can I just sleep here, between you?" "Of course," Jacob said gently. He shifted over, made space in the middle of the large bed. "Come here." Eleanor climbed onto the bed, her nightgown suddenly feeling too thin, too revealing. Caleb slid in on one side, Jacob on the other. She lay between them, stiff with nerves, hyper-aware of their warmth, their size, their presence. "Relax," Caleb murmured. His hand found hers, squeezed gently. "We're not going to hurt you." "I know," Eleanor whispered. "I trust you. That's why I'm here." Jacob's arm came around her waist, pulled her back against his chest. Caleb pressed close to her front, his face inches from hers. Surrounded by them, wrapped in their warmth and strength, Eleanor felt her fear finally begin to ease. "Thank you," she said, "for being patient, for waiting." "Thank you," Jacob said against her hair, "for trusting us enough to come here." "Is this all right?" Eleanor asked. "Just sleeping, is it enough?" "It's more than enough," Caleb said firmly. "It's everything." Eleanor closed her eyes, let herself relax into their embrace. Her body fit between theirs like a puzzle piece finding its place. This was right. This was home. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered as sleep began to claim her. "Not of you. Not of us. Not of anything." "Good," Jacob murmured. "Because you don't have to be. We've got you." "Always," Caleb added. Eleanor drifted off between them, safer than she'd ever felt in her life. This was what she'd chosen. This was what she'd been brave enough to claim. Two men who loved her, yes, she could admit it now, they loved her, and whom she was learning to love in return. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. McCready's threat still hung over them. The town would keep judging. There would be challenges, obstacles, moments of doubt. But lying there between her two husbands, Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that she could face anything. Because she wasn't alone, would never be alone again. She'd chosen courage, chosen life, chosen love in its most unconventional form. And she'd never been happier. Eleanor woke wrapped in warmth and the scent of two different men, Caleb's cedar and leather, Jacob's sage and wood smoke. For a moment, she lay perfectly still, afraid to move and break whatever spell had made her brave enough to cross that threshold. Then Jacob's arm tightened around her waist, and Caleb's eyes opened blue and clear, and full of something that made her chest ache. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning." Eleanor's voice came out scratchy. "I should probably—" "Stay," Jacob murmured against her neck. "Just a few more minutes." So she stayed, letting herself be held, letting herself want this. The fear was still there. It would probably always be there, but it was quieter now, drowned out by the steady beat of two hearts surrounding hers. Eventually they had to rise. Ranch work didn't stop for personal revelations. But when Eleanor started to retreat to her own room to dress, Caleb caught her hand. "Tonight," he said. "Come back tonight." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a demand. It was an invitation wrapped in hope. "All right," Eleanor said. "Tonight." The day passed in a blur of ordinary tasks that felt extraordinary because Eleanor kept catching herself smiling. She was done being afraid, done holding back. Tonight she'd take another step forward and another until there was no distance left between her and the life she'd chosen. Tom noticed her mood while they were reviewing supply orders. "You look happy, ma'am." "I am happy," Eleanor said, surprised by how true it was. "Good. The bosses are happier too. Whole ranch feels different when the family's content." Tom ducked his head, embarrassed by his own sentimentality. "Just saying, it's good to see." That afternoon, Martha drove out from town, her wagon loaded with fabric and notions. "Thought you might want to make some new dresses," she said, climbing down. "Can't wear the same 3 things forever?" Eleanor helped her unload. "Martha, you didn't have to." "Hush, you're working at the bank now, earning money. Consider this an investment in your professional wardrobe." Martha's eyes twinkled. "Besides, a woman starting a new life needs new clothes. Symbolic and practical." They spent the afternoon cutting patterns and talking. Martha didn't ask invasive questions, but Eleanor found herself volunteering information anyway. "I slept in their room last night," she said quietly, pinning fabric. "Just slept. But it felt like I finally stopped running." "About time," Martha said. "Those boys have been patient as saints. Most men wouldn't wait 3 weeks. Most men didn't marry into this situation." Eleanor looked up. "Do you think I'm making a mistake? Be honest." Martha set down her scissors, studied Eleanor seriously. "I think you're making the bravest choice I've ever seen. And I think it's working. You're blooming out here, girl. Growing into someone I don't think you could have become back east." "I feel different," Eleanor admitted. "Stronger. Like I finally have room to breathe." "That's what freedom looks like," Martha said. "Real freedom, not the pretty cage they call propriety back east." That evening, Eleanor bathed, carefully braided her hair loose over one shoulder, put on her best nightgown. Her hands shook as she walked down the hall, but she didn't hesitate at the door this time. Just knocked and entered when Caleb called out. Both twins were already in bed reading by lamplight. They looked up when she entered, and the books dropped forgotten. "Eleanor," Jacob said, his voice rough. "I want to stay again," she said. "If that's all right." "It's more than all right." Caleb shifted over, making space. "Come here." Eleanor climbed in, settled between them. But tonight felt different. The air was charged, expectant. She could feel their restrained desire like a physical thing pressing against her skin. "Can I ask you something?" she said into the silence. "Anything," Jacob said. "How does this work? Between the three of us, I don't understand the logistics. Who, when?" She couldn't finish the questions, her face burning. Caleb propped himself on one elbow, looked down at her. "However feels right to you. There's no rules we have to follow, Eleanor. If you're only comfortable with one of us at a time, that's fine. If eventually you want us both together, we'll figure it out. But we're not going to push you into anything before you're ready." "What if I'm never ready for both of you at once?" Eleanor forced herself to ask. "What if that's too much?" "Then it's too much," Jacob said simply. "We adjust. This isn't about fulfilling some fantasy, Eleanor. It's about building a life together. Whatever shape that takes, we'll make it work." Eleanor rolled onto her side, faced Caleb. Her heart hammered, but she made herself say it. "I want to try. Not everything. Not tonight. But something. I want to understand what this can be." Caleb's eyes darkened. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified," Eleanor admitted. "But yes, I'm sure." He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Then we'll go slow. And the moment you want to stop, you say so. Promise me." "I promise." Caleb kissed her, then not like before, not gentle and questioning. This was possession and promise all mixed together, his mouth claiming hers with barely restrained hunger. Eleanor gasped against his lips, her hands fisting in his shirt. Behind her, Jacob pressed close, his mouth finding the curve of her neck, his hands spanning her waist. Surrounded by them, drowning in sensation, Eleanor felt something break loose inside her, the last chains of fear and propriety dissolving in heat. This was right. This was hers. These men were hers, and she was theirs, and nothing about that was shameful or wrong. "More," she whispered when Caleb broke the kiss. "I want more." "Are you sure?" Jacob's voice was strained against her shoulder. "I'm sure. Show me. Teach me. Please." What happened next was gentle and overwhelming, and nothing like Eleanor had imagined. The twins moved together with practiced synchronization, learning her body with careful hands and patient mouths, building her pleasure with deliberate skill, until she was gasping and clutching at them both. They were tender where she needed tenderness, demanding where she craved strength. Reading her responses, like a language they'd studied for years. And when Eleanor finally shattered between them, crying out her release into Caleb's mouth while Jacob held her steady, she understood for the first time what she'd truly chosen. Not scandal, not sin, but partnership in its most intimate form. Three people learning to move as one, building pleasure and trust and love together. Afterward, they held her while she trembled, whispering reassurances, stroking her hair, letting her process what had just happened. That was... Eleanor started, couldn't find words. I didn't know it could be like that. It gets better, Caleb said, kissing her forehead. When you're ready for more. I don't know if I can survive better, Eleanor said shakily. Jacob laughed quietly. You'll survive. You're stronger than you think. Eleanor curled between them, exhausted and exhilarated. Her body hummed with satisfaction. Her mind spun with revelations. She'd just been intimate with both of them, not completely, but enough. Enough to understand what this life could offer. Enough to want more. I love you, she said suddenly, the words surprising even her. Both of you. I think I have for a while now. I was just too afraid to admit it. The twins went still. Then Caleb tilted her face up, his eyes fierce. Say that again. I love you. Eleanor repeated, stronger this time. I love you both. Equally. Differently. But completely. Thank God, Jacob breathed. Because we've loved you since you stepped off that stagecoach looking terrified and furious all at once. We were just waiting for you to catch up, Caleb added. Eleanor laughed, the sound bright with joy. I'm here now. Finally. Completely. No more fear. No more holding back. No more sleeping in your own room, Jacob asked hopefully. No more sleeping in my own room, Eleanor confirmed. This is where I belong. They made love to her properly that night, slowly, thoroughly teaching her what her body was capable of when fear didn't hold it hostage. Eleanor learned the difference between Caleb's intensity and Jacob's tenderness, learned how to ask for what she wanted, learned that pleasure could be both given and received. By the time dawn broke through the windows, she was exhausted and sore, and happier than she'd ever imagined possible. The next weeks brought a deepening that Eleanor hadn't thought possible. She moved her belongings into their room, transforming it from a bachelor space into something that belonged to all three of them. Her dresses hung beside their shirts. Her books lined the shelves next to their ranching manuals. Her hairbrush sat on the dresser next to their shaving things. Small domestic details that spoke of permanence, of family, of home. The work continued. Eleanor's reputation at the bank grew. Henderson recommended her to other businesses, and soon she was managing accounts for half the town's merchants. The money she earned went into a personal account the twins insisted she keep separate, her own financial security that no one could take from her. I don't need my own money, Eleanor protested. We share everything. You need it, Caleb said firmly, because you need to know you're staying by choice, not necessity. The moment you feel trapped here, that's the moment this stops working. So Eleanor kept her account, watched it grow, and felt her independence solidify into something real. The ranch prospered too. With Eleanor managing the books and finding inefficiencies the twins had missed, profits increased. They bought another 1,000 acres, hired more hands, began breeding horses alongside the cattle. Eleanor's suggestions carried real weight. The twins listened to her ideas, implemented her changes, treated her like the equal partner they'd promised she'd be. McCready tried twice more to intimidate them. The first time Caleb and Jacob rode to his property with 3 of their largest hands and made it clear that harassment would be met with force. The second time, Eleanor filed a formal complaint with the marshal documenting every threat and interaction. McCready backed off after that, apparently deciding the water rights weren't worth the legal trouble. You were right, Eleanor told the twins after the marshal dismissed McCready's accusations for lack of evidence. Out here, ability matters more than gender. The marshal took me seriously because I documented everything properly. Out here, Jacob corrected, strength matters, and you're stronger than most men I know. The town's opinion shifted gradually. Some people would always disapprove. Preacher Davies delivered a sermon about modern morality that was clearly aimed at them, and a few of the older women refused to speak to Eleanor. but most folks seemed to decide that the Chamberlains' private life was their own business. Sarah invited Eleanor to a quilting circle. Henderson's wife asked her advice on household budgets. Tom's children started calling her Aunt Eleanor. 6 months after the wedding, Eleanor realized she was late. Her monthly bleeding, regular as clockwork since she was 14, hadn't come. She said nothing for a week, afraid to hope, afraid to be wrong. But when the second week passed, with no sign, she couldn't hide it anymore. "I think I'm pregnant," she said one night, lying between them in the darkness. Both men went rigid. Then Jacob's hand found her stomach, spread across it possessively. "You're sure?" "Not completely, but I'm 2 weeks late and I'm never late." Eleanor's voice shook. Is this good? Do you want this?" "Want this?" Caleb's voice was fierce. He rolled over, pressed his face against her stomach. "Eleanor, we've wanted this since the day you said yes. A child. Our child. A family." "But we don't know who—" Eleanor couldn't finish the thought. "Doesn't matter," Jacob said firmly. "Any child you carry is ours. All 3 of ours. No questions, no doubts. We're a family, Eleanor. That means any children belong to all of us equally." Eleanor started crying, relief and joy and fear, all mixed together. "I love you both so much. I love this life. I never want to leave." "Then don't," Caleb said simply. "Stay forever. Raise our children here. Build this empire with us. Grow old watching sunsets from our porch." "Yes," Eleanor whispered. "Yes to all of it." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Eleanor kept working at the bank until her 6th month, when the ride into town became too uncomfortable. She spent those last months managing the ranch from home, her belly growing round, while she balanced ledgers and coordinated shipments. The twins were insufferable, constantly hovering, refusing to let her lift anything heavier than a coffee cup, treating her like she was made of glass again. "I'm pregnant, not dying," Eleanor snapped after Caleb physically picked her up to prevent her from climbing a step stool. "Put me down right now." "No." He carried her to a chair, set her down gently. "You're carrying precious cargo. You don't get to risk it for something I can reach easily." "He's right," Jacob said, fetching whatever she'd been reaching for. "You're going to be insufferably coddled for the next 3 months. Get used to it." Eleanor wanted to argue. Instead, she found herself laughing, one hand on her swollen belly, surrounded by men who loved her so completely they'd turned overprotective. "You're both impossible." "You love us anyway," Caleb said smugly. "Unfortunately," Eleanor agreed. The baby came on a freezing January night 3 weeks early, but healthy and screaming. Martha served as midwife, coaching Eleanor through hours of labor while the twins paced outside like caged animals. When Martha finally opened the door, both men rushed in. "You have a daughter," Martha announced. "And Eleanor's fine, exhausted, but fine." Eleanor lay in bed, sweaty and exhausted, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up when the twins entered, her eyes bright with tears. "Meet your daughter," she said softly. Caleb and Jacob crowded close, staring at the tiny red face visible in the blankets. The baby had a shock of dark hair and eyes that might become blue. She was perfect, impossibly perfect. "What should we name her?" Eleanor asked. "Hope," Jacob said immediately. "Because that's what she is. What you are. Hope for something better." "Hope," Eleanor repeated, testing the name. "Hope Chamberlain. I like it." Caleb touched the baby's tiny fist with one rough finger. She grabbed it immediately, her grip surprisingly strong. "She's ours," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Really ours." "Really ours," Eleanor confirmed. "All 3 of us. Forever." The years that followed brought more children, 2 sons born close together, both with the twins' blue eyes and Eleanor's determined chin. The ranch grew into one of the largest operations in Colorado. Eleanor's bookkeeping business expanded until she was managing accounts for clients as far away as Denver. The twins' reputation for fair dealing and smart business made them respected throughout the territory. But more than success, they built something that mattered: A family bound not by convention, but by choice. Three people who'd looked at society's rules and decided to write their own. They faced judgment and scandal and legal challenges, but they faced them together, their partnership unshakable. Eleanor never regretted her choice. Not on the hard days when neighbors gossiped. Not when Preacher Davies delivered another condemning sermon. Not when bureaucrats questioned her children's parentage. Because she had what most people only dreamed of: genuine partnership, deep love, absolute freedom to be herself. She'd chosen courage over fear, life over mere survival, love in its truest, most unconventional form. And in choosing, she'd found everything she'd never known she needed. 10 years after that first terrified step off the stagecoach, Eleanor stood on the ranch house porch, watching her children play in the yard while her two husbands worked nearby. The mountains rose sharp against the endless sky. The wind carried the scent of sage and possibility. And Eleanor, once a desperate banker's daughter with no options, was now a woman who'd built an empire on her own terms. She'd been told her whole life that happiness required following rules, staying small, accepting limitations. But she'd learned the truth that only the brave ever discover real happiness comes from breaking every rule that tries to cage you from claiming the life you want, regardless of what anyone thinks, from loving, without limits or shame or fear. Eleanor Chamberlain, wife to 2 men, mother to 3 children, business owner and ranch manager and pioneer, in every sense that mattered, smiled as Jacob looked up and caught her eye. Caleb followed his brother's gaze, and both men smiled back, identical expressions of love and pride and possession. She'd been bought by debt and sold for security, but she'd transformed that transaction into something precious. She'd taken what should have been her ruin and made it her salvation. She'd walked into the wild with nothing but terror and hope and built a legacy that would endure for generations. The world could judge all it wanted. Eleanor had everything that mattered: partnership, passion, purpose, and the absolute certainty that she'd chosen exactly right. She'd found freedom in the last place anyone expected to find it, in the arms of 2 men who loved her enough to let her be wholly, completely, triumphantly herself. And she would never, ever apologize for that choice. Not to society, not to God, not to anyone. Because real love, the kind worth fighting for, doesn't follow rules or seek permission. It simply exists, fierce and true and unbreakable, built by 3 people brave enough to claim it. That was Eleanor's truth. That was her triumph. That was the life she'd dared to build when everyone said it was impossible. And standing on that porch, surrounded by the family she'd chosen and the empire they'd created together, Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that courage had been worth every terrifying step. Love had been worth every scandal. Freedom had been worth every sacrifice. She'd gambled everything on an impossible choice. And she'd won far more than she'd ever dreamed possible.